back at it for part 2 of the Backfire G2t versus the Exway X1 Pro Riot. First thing I want to talk about is remote. Both of the boards have a remote that has an LED screen on it so that you can see miles per hour. You can see what modes you're in, first, second, and third, and fourth. Different things like that. You can also see the battery remote, how much charge you have, and things like that. The Backfire G2t also has kind of like an odometer as well, so when you're riding you can see how many miles you've actually traveled right now. You cannot see that on the remote of the Exway, but Exway has the app and you can open up the app and you can see that information. Both remotes, great remotes. The boards use Hobbywing ESC. I'm a big fan of the scroll wheels. Very good. I will say that the Exway remote is a little bit smaller. It has the odometer. The Exway does not have the odometer on it like the Backfire, but they're both very similar in that you get to see how fast you're going and things like that. The Exway remote is a little bit smaller than the Backfire, but they're both great remotes. I prefer the feel of the Backfire a little bit because I love that circle thing, and it's a little bit bigger and I have big hands, but they're really both good remotes. To be honest about it, the Backfire remote has the turbo button on there. This remote only has 2 speed modes. I think it's called standard. No, what is it called? Eco and sport mode. That's what they call it. So sport mode will go upwards of, I think, 12 miles an hour to the board's top speed. Whereas on this board here, you actually have 4 modes. And I kind of like being able to choose between the different modes because I may not, if you're trying to conserve battery, you might want to just throw it in second gear or whatever the case may be. So I like that it has that ability to do that. And that's probably more of an ESC thing than a remote thing, but it's kind of one and the same. What else about these remotes? They both, the Exway has one button, and that one button does everything. It changes between speeds, everything. That's how that remote operates. This remote has the turbo button, it has the power on button, and then it also has the speed mode bunted on there. And then with the Backfire, you have an up and down switch to go forward and backwards on the board. The Exway, you can have the option of, if you want to go backwards, you can set it up to where the scroll wheel, when you pull back, it actually goes in reverse or it breaks. So that's a feature, and that's the remote and also the ESC, which is a great feature. And since I'm talking about that braking, the Exway, both boards have good braking, but the Exway, the braking is just amazing. Like, it comes to complete stops if you want it to stop. Whereas the Backfire is going to brake and then it's going to come to maybe 1 or 2 miles an hour and then it will stop. But like with the Exway, I can stop on like small hills, like a complete stop, which is very impressive, and I like that it does that. So that's the remotes. I mean, both of them are pretty good. I mean, one is not necessarily better than the other. I mean, I think they're both very solid. Charging ports is on the bottom of both of them. The one thing I will say, because they have LED screens, I have another board that has a remote that does not have an LED screen. That remote battery lasts forever, but of course it doesn't have a screen on it. I can ride that board 6, 7, 8 times and not have to charge the remote, whereas these, you might get 2 or 3 rides. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just because they have displays on them. Good remotes, both of them for the most part. Love the scroll wheels on both of them. Can't really go back wrong with them. All right. As I mentioned in my previous video about the Exway versus the Backfire, the Exway comes with an app, and that app allows you to do a ridiculous amount of customization as far as braking curve, speed curve, and different things like that at each of the speed modes 1, 2, 3, 4. You can also turn on the turbo button, so if you want to get a little bit higher top speed than what the board traditionally states. So through the grapevine that Backfire is coming out with an app, and it's supposed to work with all of their boards that have this LED screen on it. But if you're somebody that likes all that customization and all of that kind of stuff, then the Exway might be for you if you like that kind of thing. If you're really big into the apps, the app allows you to see a lot of different things: the temperature of the board, the battery. It allows you to see how far you've gone. They even have this real cool feature that tells you how much carbon you've saved by riding the board versus driving your car. Exway be doing the most, but nevertheless, that's what it is with the app. The Exway has the app. The Backfire doesn't have the app. Is it a bad or good thing? No, not necessarily. It's probably about rider preference. What do you want? If you want an app and that kind of thing, you might want that. Trucks. Both of these boards use reputable brand trucks. The Backfire G2t uses the caliber truck, and the Exway uses the seismic truck. Some people who are probably like skaters for 30, 40 years can tell, oh, this is so great, or you can really feel it. They're both good quality brand name trucks. I will say, and I still got to ride the Exway a little bit more. I do feel like when I'm leaning or turning on the board with the Exway, I do feel like it's a tiny bit more stable, especially like at slower speeds. That could just be me. It also could be the deck, because the deck has a little bit of concave on it, whereas the Backfire doesn't have concave on it. So it could be that. The bottom line is that both of these boards utilize reputable brand name trucks. Well, at least the Backfire G2t has the caliber truck in the front, then they have a caliber Tron in the back. And I'm trying to remember if the Exway has a seismic truck in the back. I know it has one in the front. I'll put a comment up top whether or not it has one in the back as well. So they both use reputable trucks. It's not like a brand that a budget brand where they're using a brand that nobody's ever heard of. So they both use good reputable brands, so it's kind of up to you. Range. So as a skater, most people want to know a couple of things. You talk about a board: acceleration, price, and range. How far can I go in this thing? The Backfire G2t has batteries that are up under the board, and you can see it there. And then the Exway, the batteries and everything is encased inside of the deck. Backfire G2t has a little bit more watt hours per usage than the Exway. Hypothetically, that could mean that the Backfire should last longer. I am not a battery guru. There's so many factors that go into batteries. If you know a lot about batteries, put a comment below. But what I will tell you is that if you're a heavier rider, you're probably going to get less range than a rider who's lighter, who rides the same as you. So you want to keep that in mind. If you're somewhere and you have a lot of hills where you live, that's going to eat into how long the battery lasts. When you talk about if it's cold outside, you're not going to get as much range. To be honest about it, I've always been getting, let's say if a skateboard company says you're going to get 15 miles, I'm always about 5 to 6 miles less than what they state. So I'm getting about 9 to 10 miles on really both of these boards so far. Really, I only ride the Exway in mode 3 because it gets 22 miles an hour in mode 3. And the thing that I really like about this board, the Exway, is the torque. And some people are like, well, what do you mean with torque? I like that when I'm accelerating, it goes quickly. The Backfire has a very good top speed, but I feel like it just takes a little bit longer to get there if you're not using the turbo button. Whereas with the Exway, the torque, it accelerates a lot quicker, and that comes in handy when you're riding in the streets. If there's a car behind you, you want to be able to go quick and not get to your top speed slower, but get there, but you want it to go and go now. So that's one of the things that I really like about the board. And since I was talking about turbo, the Exway has a turbo, but you turn it on in the app. And what their turbo does is it lets you break the regular top speed and get a little bit more speed. The Backfire G2t has a turbo button. Some people, there's a lot of controversy about the turbo button on the Backfire G2t. In order to turn it on, you have to no longer accelerate on the board. You can be moving, but you have to take your hand off of, so if you want to turn on turbo, you have to take your hand off of the acceleration for a second, turn on turbo, then keep going. That's problematic because if I'm going up a hill, I don't want to take my hand off the acceleration because now I didn't slow down 5-6 miles an hour, and now I try to turn on turbo, I got to try to build that speed back up. So that could be a little problematic. Another thing that people talk about why they don't like the turbo, or one of the things they don't like about the turbo on this, and it's done it to me. When you turn on the turbo button, it accelerates so quick, but it only lasts for 30 seconds. And when it turns off, the power to the board, not the power to the board, but the acceleration drops so quick that it jolts you. The very first time I used turbo, I almost got thrown off the board because when the turbo deactivated after 30 seconds, it went boom, and it turned down to the normal speed, and it dropped, a couple miles an hour, like real quick, and it almost threw me off. I was watching another video, and somebody was like, when they use the turbo, they count down in their head, 30, 29, 28. And before I got the board, I was like, man, it can't be that bad. Guys, if you're not paying attention when using the turbo, when it deactivates, you'll feel it like throw you off. One of the other reasons I don't use the turbo, I found that when I use the turbo button, it literally, and it might be because of my weight, it literally takes like a bar of my battery. So literally, if I use it one time, I'm gonna lose a battery. I'm gonna lose a notch on my battery. So I don't even really use the turbo button. And that was one of the reasons I bought the Backfire G2t, because you heard, oh, turbo, I can use turbo, I can use turbo. The one thing about Backfire is that their new board, the G3 and the G3 Plus, the turbo lasts indefinitely or until the board gets to a certain percentage where you can't turn turbo on anymore. So, you know, how you want your turbo is kind of up to you. I mean, they're both, you know, good boards. If I had to say which turbo I like more and would I probably use more, probably would be the turbo on the Exway. Only because that jolt, and then that would probably be the main reason. But it's a good board. But like I was saying, on the new Backfire boards, the G3 and the G3 Plus, the turbo, it works indefinitely, so you don't have to worry about it cutting off after 30 seconds. And then also the Backfire newer boards, they have much beefier batteries. So actually, you know, if you're using a turbo, it probably won't give you the problem of when I used it, it really took down some of my power. Price. The Exway is a little bit more expensive than the Backfire G2t. I'm not going to say what the price is because price fluctuates. Right now it's holiday season. I can tell you that they both are on sale. The Exway is on sale anywhere from $200 to $300 less than what it was originally. The Backfire, I think, is about $150 less. But even without sales, the Exway is a cheaper board. Oh, I'm sorry, the Exway is the more expensive board, and the Backfire is the more economical board. I don't want to use the word cheaper because I wouldn't say that the Backfire is a cheap board. It's just more economical. So if somebody was like, hey, my price point is $400, $500, you might be looking over here. But if your price point was a little bit more, you might be able to look at the Exway. It's really up to you and your budget and what you're looking for. Let me give you an example of something. I used to ride motorcycles, and one of the things that they tell people that if you're going to buy a motorcycle, you always want to buy what's called like the standard CC edition, which is like 600 cc's. You don't want to go less. They have motorcycles that are like 250 cc's, and they're much slower. But what happens is some people buy those kind of motorcycles because they're like, I want to learn and I want to be safe. And what happens is when they buy that motorcycle, they ride it for 2 months. They learn how to ride, and they're bored of the motorcycle because it doesn't have the thrill and acceleration anymore. And then they end up selling the other one and immediately buying another one. So one of the things I can tell you is that the torque on the Exway is a little bit more than the Backfire G2t. So if you're somebody that you know that you're going to eventually, once you really learn your board, you're going to want torque, you're going to want acceleration, you're going to want to customize things, the Exway might be for you. But if you're somebody who's like, hey, I just want to cruise around, chill with the family, things like that, save a little money, but still want to get into the game of riding before you make a super crazy investment, Backfire is a great board for you. Be honest, you really can't go wrong with either one of these boards. They've been good to me. To be honest about it, the Backfire's been good to me. I've done almost 300 miles on it. My wife is riding it now. She likes it. And I'm riding the Exway. Both of them are good boards. Sometimes I grab the Backfire. Sometimes I grab the Exway. Kind of depends on the mood that I'm in. But they're both good boards. I don't think you can go wrong with either one of them. Customer service. I haven't had an issue with the Exway to use the customer service yet, but from what I've heard, they have good customer service. If you reach out to them, they get in touch with you. I haven't heard anything negative about it. I've heard that the boards are great quality, and that all I can say is really what I've heard, and I heard the customer service is good. With the Backfire, Backfire is one of the brands in a budget range that has a pretty good reputation with customer service. I've used their customer service twice. I used it about a month after I had the board when I tore my charger cable. I don't know how it happened. I sent them a picture of it. They didn't even complain. They emailed me back within like 24 hours and said, what's your address? And then 2 days later, I had a new charger cable for my remote. And then about 3 weeks ago, I started hearing a sound in one of my hub motors. I took a video of it, emailed it to Backfire. Within 24 hours, they responded, sent me a label, I think it was an express label also, to put the motor in and send on the motor. They got the motor, fixed it, and sent it back express. So my motor was gone for maybe a week, and I was back riding. So I was pretty impressed with that with Backfire. I think that Backfire offers a warranty. I think it's a 6-month warranty on their boards. I think it's 6 months. And Exway is either 6 months or a year. I'll put the exact amount in the video. But from what I've heard, the customer service is pretty good on both of them. I don't think you can go wrong from a customer service perspective, because for some people, that's one area that they're really concerned about. What I will tell you guys, try to stay away from some of these brand new board companies and stuff like that. I've heard these horror stories of how people spend $400, $500, $600 on a board, something goes bad, and they just ignore you. And with some of these countries being companies based out of the country, what are you gonna do? Can't get your money back, can't go in and complain. So I would always say stick with a reputable brand when you're trying to get a board, and there's several of them out there, you know, from WOWGO to Exway to Backfire. So a lot of people like the Meepo boards as well. It's really up to you. You know, the thing is, get something that's quality, that people are saying that the customer service okay, that you don't hear too many problems with the boards. Riding these boards, I would say they're both very solid boards. I don't think you can go wrong with either one of them. If you want to see some of the other factors I talked about in the first video that'll help you decide, please check out the other video. I'll put a link, boom, 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 put the link there. But like I said, I don't think you can go wrong with either one of these boards. I hope this video has helped you out. As always, I see you at the top because the bottom is too crowded. Skate on, put your helmet and stuff on, guys. Peace.